Hello and welcome everyone. My name is Juraj Holub and I'm very lucky to be joined by Gerrit Heikop from Live Online Events, who is an absolute expert on hybrid events.
Yes,
And
good morning, Juraj.
good morning. Today we'll be talking about how to organize successful hybrid event. What are the key elements and how to generate some high levels of engagement. But before we fully kick off, Garrett, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, a little bit then. Most people might know me because I always walk around on red sneakers. So at some point, I just started to call myself Mr. Red Sneakers. I've been involved in the events industry since 2009, first as an event startup, technology startup, then as a social media consultancy or social media expert. For the last 2.5 years, we've been working professionally and fully on creating these stunning and rocking online engagements. It's like taking live streaming to the next level, and the most exciting bit of that is that recently we've been awarded with 2 clients the best event webcasting award in Europe. So we're pretty excited about that.
Wow, that's amazing! Congratulations, Garrett.
Thanks.
I know that one of those awards you received with ESOT event.
Yes,
That you
European Society of Organ Transplantation.
Exactly. Can you please tell us a little about this event and what made it so successful?
Yeah, so what we did there, this was a 3-day conference, 4-day conference, I should say, in Brussels in September 2015. About 5,000 transplantation professionals from all over Europe and all over the world came together in Brussels in the square. And well, they have a traditional medical scientific conference, right? Some very exciting keynote talks, more in-depth medical talks, papers, the whole bang. What we did there is that during the course of the first 3 days, twice a day, we created a thematic show. So we had a 2.5 hour online TV show specifically about one topic. And that show would always consist of some content that would start in the studio. We had a Transplant Live, that's how it was called, studio, where we would kind of introduce the topic. Then we would switch the stage and we would show off some of the best content that they had available. And then we would go back to the studio to either go in depth or did an interactive Q&A with the speaker that just came from stage. We showed conference reports from other places in the event that people could not access with our cameras. So it was a whole very well thought through editorial piece of content that tried to pull in people from all over the world, from all different time zones.
That sounds absolutely amazing, and as you said yourself, very well thought through. So, drawing from organizing this amazing conference, what would you say? What are the key elements of any successful hybrid event?
Well, I think you have to see a hybrid event, or we call it live online events, and that's not only because of the branding, but also because of that is what it is. It's like a perfect storm of 3 elements. It's the live event, the conference or the product launch or the corporate event, where you want to select some of the best content that you have available, and you should, because live events are expensive content, right? It's a very big investment to get that all up. Then the second component in the storm is TV. I mean, we've all been used to watching hours and hours of TV. And if you compare to what people have been doing in live streaming, I mean, watching TV and spending a couple of hours on the couch behind the TV is not a single camera in the back of the room with poor audio. No, that's a multi-camera dynamic experience where you follow the story, where someone has actually thought of a story and an editorial storyline that you want to follow. And then the third component in the storm is, well, people are not on their couch watching TV. They're on their mobile device or behind their laptop, where they can use their fingers to actually interact with you. So if you get these 3 components, best content of your live event, a TV-like production style, and then use the ability for them to interact, then you truly get an online event in itself, right? This is an experience that people really enjoy. Not the same as being there physically, but much better than being not being there at all.
You touched on interaction or interactivity. So yes. How did you manage to engage online audience? What were the tools? What were the formats? we can start with formats. How exactly did you engage
Yeah,
your online audience?
we had a couple of formats which basically go on. It's Q&A, so people could submit questions to speakers either that they saw on stage or directly into the studio. It's polling, because that's also a great way to get people into the interactivity tool and get acquainted with the tooling, and yet at the same time to create a mutual experience, right? Where we both create content and share something. And the third format, I would say, is the virtual back channel that always kind of pops up at these online events, where people kind of online participants amongst each other start chatting away, mostly related to the topic, but sometimes just randomly about other stuff, and that just adds to the fun.
Right. And you talked about polling. When exactly did you poll the online audience, or was it only the online audience, or did you?
In this case, we've done other cases where we did both live and online audience. In this case, it was just the online audience, and we just kind of use it as a Kickstarter, kind of. So where are you watching from? Kind of to show because you got to imagine, if you're watching that, you're just sitting there by yourself, or perhaps with some colleagues. So the poll is a great way to also show that they're not alone, and that there's other people right there at that time, at that moment, participating in the same thing from all over the world. And that is one of the big features, I believe, that makes these online events exciting, right? That sense of a cosmopolitan belonging almost.
Sounds great. And we spoke. I just mentioned that the other aspect of engaging online audiences using tools that will allow you to do that. So what kind of tools did you use?
We use two tools, and one of them will make you very happy. But in first, of course, we use social media, dedicated hashtag on Twitter, Facebook posts that people can live comment on. We monitor Instagram, because if they start to interact on social media, that will give us massive extra discovery, right? The fact that they start to interact with us on social media will show on their friends and colleagues' timelines, and in that way, a lot of other people will discover the broadcast and will tune in. However, we also know that quite a lot of people do not have access to social media, or, for example, this was a business context, they don't want to interact on Facebook with their personal profile in their business context. So that's why we also always offer a tool where you do not need any account or any infrastructure to sign into. And well, that tool is the blog we are currently on, and that is obviously the Slido tool, which we have been using with great fun and great pleasure. Yeah.
No. So tools are just the tools unless you use them really well.
Yeah.
So what was the key to reaching the high levels of engagement?
Yeah, I think it's kind of a multi-step rocket, so to speak, and it starts with a proper communication plan. Well, even before that, it starts with a good piece of content, right? Content that people actually want to watch and see and be part of. But let's say you have that. Then the second key feature is, do you have a proper communications plan that is tailored to creating live viewers? Because you can have as much interactivity designed if you want, but if nobody's there, then there's not a lot going to happen. And not to go too much into depth about that, but one key thing that especially event organizers should realize is that it's a flip model, where normally you see a peak in your communication somewhere anywhere between 6 to 3 weeks before your event. With online events, it's really a last minute call. You really have to push it in the last 48 hours, because it's almost like an impulse decision that people say, like, okay, I'm going to tune into this live stream, right? A lot of people, or we find that not many people will free up their agenda to participate in an online event. And even if they do, it doesn't mean that much, because if something else comes along, they drop it and go do that. So that's key. And once you have that audience there with you, then the next thing is that you actually allow, and this is not only for online events, also for live events, that you allow for some proper time for interactivity, right? It's always so pitiful to see, oh, now we have 5 minutes for Q&A. Well, you got to realize that, first of all, if people are in listening mode, they need some time to reflect and think about, so how does it apply to me? And then what things do I run into before they can actually formulate a question. Then, especially in an online event, that takes some time. They have to type it in, and you could even have to deal with the fact that people are sometimes either 30 seconds to about 2 minutes behind through to the buffering of the internet video streaming. So second key element is time. Allow proper time for people to come up with questions, and I'll actually go through because well, as you know, but other people who read this work probably know as well, once that first or second question comes in, and once people inspire each other with other questions, right? So rather schedule like 10 minutes or 10 or 20 minutes of white space for a Q&A to properly kickstart, instead of 5 minutes and then after 3 minutes saying, well, this is not working, let's move on. So that's a key element, and that kind of segues straight into the third element, which I think is key, and that is a proper moderator that understands this process, that can fill up that time in between, and can actually trigger and pull out the questions from the audience. That is I find that is a specific skill that not everybody just has. It's not like, are there any questions? And then wait. You kind of have to help people to come up with that.
I totally agree with you. And at Slido, we like to say that the event moderator is sort of like a driver who can actually drive the audience happily to the final destination and just like make them happy and reach that goal that the event organizer set out. And it's got a major role in generating this audience interaction and audience engagement.
Yeah.
And Garrett, you mentioned that you used Slido for engaging your online as well as on-site audience. So can you just very briefly sum up in what way you used Slido?
So Slido is part of our online infra or real estate, basically. So if an online viewer comes to our event, they have to participate somewhere, right? That is often, you can call it a platform, but basically it ends up being some kind of URL or website. And what it looks like is that we use 2/3 of the screen for the video player, and here we have 1/3 of the screen, which we call our interactivity box. And that's basically just an iframe with the Slido interface in there, where people can choose to either chat, to participate in polls, or to ask questions or upvote questions from other people.
Mm-hmm. And what sessions or what formats did you use Slido for?
Well, we have it open throughout. So it's the chat stream is where we use for support questions, or like I say, the virtual back channel, the polls obviously for the polls, and the questions for the Q&A.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. And now moving back to the sort of general engagement and interaction, what do you see as the main difference between engaging online and on-site audiences?
Yeah, I had to think about that a little bit, and I don't think there's that many differences.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the process is the same. A lot of the only difference, I guess, that I feel as a moderator is that obviously in an online event, I'm talking to a camera, and I do not get any physical feedback of how this is landing with you, whether you are fully engaged with me, like non-verbally, or whether you're distracted, whether you have trouble getting in the tool, or you just don't have anything to ask. So that is obviously those are all cues that in a physical environment, as a moderator, you can tap into and kind of steer with, or poke them up, or kind of settle them down, whatever is needed in that room. And that feedback you don't really have online. So as a moderator, you're a little bit more in the dark, but other than that, the process is quite similar.
Mm-hmm. And with the uptake of live videos on social media, Facebook came up with their own. Then we've got a Periscope, so we can really see more and more people actually jumping on this bandwagon. Mm-hmm. And you've got an amazing experience from moderating these hybrid events, or live online events, as you call them. So what do you think? What will define the success in this field? Who will actually rise to the top?
Well, obviously, I've been experimenting with that myself as well. And basically, if you look at it, it's always a mix of technology and content and format, right? So the technology of live streaming has become all of a sudden really cheap. Well, has become free. But still, if you apply the same format that a lot of these live streams, I would say, are not working in live events today. So if you just go in a room, pull out your phone, and from a far distance try to capture what's happening on stage, I don't know if you've been in any of these. A lot of people start to experiment with that, and I just think that's a really, really poor experience from a remote attendee perspective, right? So that's just as bad as the paid version was. What makes it immediately more successful is, first of all, if you start to host the thing. So for those of you watching who experience with Facebook Live or Periscope, whatever, flip that camera, talk to your viewers, be there for them, and guide them through. And you can show stuff, of course, but you have to really host it, right? Take me through the story of what you're seeing or what you're experiencing. And the second thing is, again, there's that interactivity again. If you then start to respond, if viewers, especially in Periscope, but also now on Facebook Live, if viewers start to respond to you or tell you go there, and you then do that, that creates a much better and more fun interactive experience. And funny thing is, it goes both ways, right? Because this experience with Periscope and Facebook Live then has triggered us to actually do these kind of formats with a proper camera and proper production quality in live events, right? So we have occasions where we just go with a shouldered camera into a conference with a single mic and just walk around and bump into people and interview them. And sometimes we sit in on a session, and we have a little bit more production value, so we put proper audio in our camera so you can actually follow what's going on stage. So I think it's an exciting time. A lot of people get used to being part of events online, and my call out to all event organizers and all people experimenting, keep thinking about that remote experience and make it as good as you can.
Those are some great tips, and unfortunately, our time is sort of getting
It's been long already.
exactly.
You're still watching. Congratulations, great attention span.
Yeah, totally. So I was just wondering, Garrett, if you could sum up very briefly how to organize successful live online events in 3 simple points.
Yeah. The key message would be, think about that perfect storm of 3 elements. So select the very best and the best content of your event, and allow for some time to make it interactive. Secondly, think about a TV style production level. So you want to go multiple cameras. You want to drive attention to your editorial storylines and make sure that it's a really engaging content. Also, because that makes that content much more usable as a recording, right? In your video content marketing, whatever you need. And thirdly, but that's one kind of also, I guess, for myself, but you got to pay attention to your host. Work with an experienced host who understands what it's like to be a remote participant and can really kickstart and foster the engagement with them.
Garrett, thank you so much for sharing all your invaluable advice.
Thank you. Glad to be part of it.
Thank you.